Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Harvey Heritage Office. And so this is our Harvey Heritage Presentation series. We've had a presentation a couple of weeks ago, we had one in November. And so the plan is to just have one from time to time of topics of interest to some of us. Not everybody's going to be here, we can't fit everybody anyway, so anyway, Harvey Heritage is a nonprofit, volunteer heritage organization, and the purpose is to provide a local resource to assist in the preservation, dissemination, and full inclusion of the history and heritage of the Harvey rural community. So we have memberships available for $10 a person. We're always open for new members, and what I do is send out little messages, emails with little tidbits of information or information about the presentations that we're expecting. So hopefully there's a little nugget in there that's a little bit different than what we would get on Facebook. But we do have a Facebook page, and we also have Old Harvey photos, which Janet here runs very well. Almost daily we get at least a photograph, 2 or 3, all very nicely annotated. And we actually save all those photographs. We have a digital archive, which is huge now because we have all those books that are in the bookshelf there. They're all digitized as well. So we have quite a archive of information. Anyway, we're fortunate to have Elsie Carroll here to talk about McAdam, but we'll introduce her in a little bit. I just thought that before we get started, I'll tell you where the washrooms are, and they're always open. They're over by the restaurant, and then you go to the right, so that's where they are. And we thought that we would start by having pie, railroad pie. And you know, like, there's this book that was developed by, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about it. I don't know if they're still available, but.
Oh, we definitely have lots of cookbooks still available. I think everybody in the province is buying them.
Yeah, so anyway, some of these recipes are being used right here. And but it's really our version of railroad pie, but we just thought it would be a good idea, you know, to celebrate that fundraising effort for McAdam station. So if you want to get up and have some pie, and then we can relax, and then Elsie will give us a talk, and our director here, Alec Bridge, will introduce Elsie for that. And we also have tea. We have tea, Will?
Shortly.
Okay, so please help yourself.
Any gluten-free pies?
Not that I'm aware of. Wow. Okay, maybe we want to have pie afterwards? Is that what we want to do?
I think that would be better. We can get some stuff out of the way.
Okay.
All right, we'll do pie after.
Okay.
Okay.
Alec.
Thank you. Elsie Carroll. I met Elsie last summer. My wife and I were at the station, and Elsie was wandering around, and she said, "Can I help you?" And she took us on a short tour, and we connected again, and I thought it would be interesting to have her come and share some of the thoughts and ideas that they are doing over there. She has a group of nearly 20 volunteers at that station, and Elsie has been the, what is your title these days?
Chairman of the Board of Directors.
Board of Directors, yes. She's done that for 5 years. She retired. She's been working at the station on and off, cooking, working in the kitchen, working in the restaurant area. What do we call the restaurant area?
Lunch counter.
The lunch counter, which is like a giant S that goes through the so when we started talking, I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have her come? And then I remembered, holy cow, I've got a connection here. So back in 1951, my father, who was a minister, took a church in Canada. We immigrated from England. And in 1951, we arrived in Halifax, which is now Pier 21, and got off the ship. And I, as a little kid, was looking around at all these big buildings. We left a city of 500,000 people in Sussex, in Hove, in England, and came to Halifax, smaller town. Got on the train the next morning and arrived at McAdam. We got off the train at McAdam and changed trains to go to Andover, because that one was heading north, Edmundston, Grand Falls. And my mother got off the train, being a very gentle English lady, and stood and looked at this colossal train station, the largest one in
Eastern Canada.
Eastern Canada, and said to my father, Wilson, this is very nice, this is very nice. Her expecting that all things would be large and grand like that. Until we got off the train in Andover, which was about the train station was about the size of the ice cream parlor, and it had a dirt track going to the house. And my mother turned to my father after remembering the train station in McAdam and said, Wilson, what have you brought us to? He said, never mind, it's going to be locally, it's going to be locally. And we lived forever after in Canada, on and on. But Elsie has stories. Her title of her talk is Canada's Greatest Secret, Best Kept Secret. So please, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing is that we are attempting to board the session, just in case you wanted to say anything. Be careful.
Oh, yes, I'll just say nice things. Thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's my first time in this building. I knew that Harvey had a historical restoration group, and there's a lot of buildings in the Harvey area that I don't know if they're being restored, need to be restored, if you have buildings that you're working on, or just artifacts themselves that you have.
Monuments mostly.
What is it?
Monuments.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we're quite a bit different from you in that respect. I did bring a couple of pictures of the train station for those that have never seen it. Anyone here has never been to McAdam? Never seen the train station? This is what it looks like today. Or it better be when I go back, still look like that. And I also got a picture of an old original picture. This picture was probably taken 20 years ago. And this picture here that I'm going to show you was taken shortly after the entire building was completed. This is actually a picture that I'm not going to let you handle, because you can see the wooden platforms, the fountain at the back, the hedges it had, and this is a complete building. The three sets of tracks were on this side of the building, and there are 3 sets of tracks on the other side of the building.
What year would that be?
Anytime after 1911.
Yep.
It was 1910, 1911 when they finished the complete building to make it look like this. So I'm sure you've never seen a picture like this before. We're hoping to get some of these reproduced and available for sale in our gift shop. Beautiful building. Make sure we don't
What year did you say that was in?
This would be any time after 1910, 1900 is when the building was initially built, okay? And that only includes the center part. And they built on the lunch counter, was built on 1910, and the baggage and express rooms on the other end were built on in 1911. So in 1911, the whole thing was completed. Now, it was a big, long history lesson to tell you why they built this huge station in McAdam, New Brunswick, as they say some places, the backwoods of the province. So, I am going to give you a little bit of history. If there's anything you want to know or any questions, please feel free to ask them. I didn't really know what to say today. I didn't know how many people had been there. Well, I know you've all been there and seen the building. We've been through the inside of the building. Been upstairs. Seen a ghost. No. You'll have to come back because there are ghosts in the building. Did you enjoy it? Have you eaten in the station?
Yes.
Christmas dinners?
Yes.
My goodness, you folks probably know much about as I do.
That's all recent things.
Okay, so the building was built, I was organized. I do have a bunch of stuff here. Right here, Charlie. Okay, and I do have some other little things here I'm gonna tell you. Cool, so do you know who owns the McAdam Railway Station? The group of volunteers, 19 people in the group, I'm the chairman of the board, and the group is called the McAdam Historical Restoration Commission. And their purpose is to restore the McAdam Railway Station the way it was when it was built. And a lot of that has been completed on the inside especially, you'll notice that. But the outside hasn't changed in 150 years, 124 years I guess now. And we've had roofs put on and we've had changes that way, and the building is made of granite. Granite was quarried in McAdam. Down the North Rail line, about 3 miles down there, a huge granite quarry, and it is still there. It was all built by hand, and it's hard to imagine that. Now, the entire building, short history there, it's 124 years old, and it's reminiscent of an era when travel was by train and when living was more relaxed. It is one of the most photographed buildings in the province of New Brunswick. And on viewing this grand edifice, it is easy to understand why it is such a magnet for tourists. It draws about 65,000 tourists to McAdam every year.
Whoa.
We have a massive amount of people coming to McAdam. And here on July the 2nd, we have 4 buses coming from Ontario. One's coming on the 2nd, on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th. Tour buses out of Ontario. That'll be a first for us coming from Ontario. So we're looking forward to that. And they're all coming for a meal and tours. Now in the early 1980s, the McAdam Railway Station was dedicated as a National Historic Site. In the late 1990s, I believe it was 1996, it was dedicated as a Provincial Historic Site. And it is one of the 11 remaining heritage railway stations in Canada. There are only 11 train stations left in this country that are designated heritage railway stations.
This is the only one in Atlantic Canada?
This is the only one in Atlantic Canada with that designation. Everything else has been torn down.
So it's the only remaining one?
The only one that is a heritage railway station. There are stations here that are in the province, in Atlantic Canada, being used, that are still operational, still being used as train stations. I don't know how old they are, I don't know when they were built and the changes that were made to them. But our train station has had no changes made to it, except for repairs, roofs and things like that that have to be repaired. And we are presently undergoing, I don't know if you were aware, but last September we had the government arrived in McAdam, well we knew they were coming because we've been 5 years trying to put a heating system in the train station. It has heat in there, we do not use it in the winter. We spend, our largest bill is for empty power, paying the power bill. We turn everything off, we seal the doors up, turn all the heat off, just leaving the bare minimum on to keep the water from freezing. That is from the end of December until usually May or June we start reopening. We still have our trees, Christmas trees in the station today because we do not keep the building open to take everything down. We'll do that when it warms up a bit. That is our biggest bill. And last September, the provincial government and the federal government announced a $1.1 million grant for the McAdam Railway Station to put in a geothermal heating and cooling system. And we will also have air conditioning when that gets installed. Unfortunately, they can't do it until the ground thaws. We have to drill wells. We have one drill that was drilled 3 years ago as part of the project to see if it was a good spot to do it, and it's a perfect spot, and the engineers are on board. And we're possibly going to get a crew together and start doing the inside, into the infrastructure first. And that money, $1.1 million, will only do the main floor. The infrastructure for the upper 2 floors will be installed, but the heat won't be put up there yet, because that's not enough money to do that. Hard to believe, isn't it? We have to go under 2 sets of tracks, a set of tracks to get into the building. So And at that time, we're also gonna be putting in new sewer pipes, new water pipes, new computer, wires, everything we need, so we can actually use a cell phone without standing by the window and sticking your hand up the door to make your phone work, because it just isn't built for that type of technology. Any questions? Now, the station was commissioned by Sir William Cornelius Van Horn. Anybody ever heard of him?
Yep.
What building is he owning in New Brunswick, did he own? His island, his summer home. He also built the Canadian Pacific Railway for Canada's Confederation. He was responsible for building the railway in Canada. As we all know, if anybody went to school, we all went to school, we learned the same things. Not like today, where they don't learn a lot of history. We learned that without the railway, there was no country. Atlantic Canada was not joining Confederation until they built a railway from sea to sea. And the government of the day promised to do that. And they hired William Van Horn. Now, Van Horn was from Chicago, Illinois. He started working for the railways in Chicago at the age of 14. He was an extremely smart person. He ended up being president of the railway system in the United States. And they lured him to Canada to build a railway in Canada. And they paid him quite a few $1 million to build that railway. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole history of Confederation and building the railway, but that is why the railway came to McAdam. There was always railways in McAdam, always trains there. They didn't go anywhere. They went to St. Stephen, St. Andrews, and that was it. There weren't national railways. They just did the local area. So anyway, he built a railway. Now, we all know the disaster that happened with that in the West. Sir John A. Macdonald was overthrown by the government. Van Horn was thrown out of the government because of that. But they did build a railway. Now, the railway came from across Canada, through the Rocky Mountains, and it came into, they got to Montreal. They wanted the shortest route to Atlantic Canada. It was not easy to get to Atlantic Canada when you look at the map, because we're way down here by the United States. So, they built a railway through the territory of Massachusetts. 285 miles. Anybody know where that is? What's that known as today? State of Maine. Right straight through the middle of the state of Maine, back into Canada at St. Croix, New Brunswick. 5 miles from the McAdam Railway Station. Wow. Now, at that time, there was no big fancy train station in McAdam. There was a little small station, but the trains started coming. And that is why they built the big station. Van Horn built a summer home, and all his rich friends were coming to visit him. And they weren't going to sit in a little station that wasn't important. They were going right straight to St. Andrews. He had his own train in McAdam that took his friends to Minister's Island. Really? They went down. If you ever notice on Minister's Island, when you go to the island, you look through on the road, when you get to the water, you look on your left, there's a big yellow house there. And just behind that house, you can see where there had been a path. That was the rail line. And in there was a little tiny train station. And that's what the trains that brought his friend, they came to there, and then they would get on a boat or whatever. He had a large boat, and the friends would go to Minister's Island and spend a week or however long they were going to be there. When that train stopped at that little station, Van Horn was very, very particular. They had to stop exactly, the door of the train had to be exactly opposite the door of the station. And if it wasn't, it was a new engineer the next day. He was very, very particular. So that's why finally the railroad, CP Rail was in the red. They were on the verge of collapse. Van Horn was spending money, way ridiculous. Special trains for friends and meals and all this stuff. So they hired another man that worked for CP Rail. He was the bookkeeper. And he was a good friend of Van Horn's. And he became the president of CP Rail when they let Van Horn go. And he cut all the extra costs. That's why they built the Grand Station in McAdam. So Van Horn's friends, when they had to wait overnight for the next day to go to St. Andrews, they had a place to stay. There was a five-star dining room, 5-star hotel on the 2nd floor. 3rd floor has dormitories where the staff worked, where the staff lived. The staff that worked there, they lived in the building. And they also had a male dormitory for the men that worked there. They They had a lunch counter for the common people. That was life. So that's why they built that grand station in McAdam.
And there were 20 rooms, weren't there?
There was originally, in the original building was 7 hotel rooms. And when they added the extension on in 1910, there's 10 more hotel rooms with 17 hotel rooms, which are still there. They're set up like hotel rooms, they're arranged like hotel rooms, most of them. And we're gonna have a new exhibit there this summer, which will be interesting. And the top floor is for the dormitories.
You don't take people overnight from that hotel, do you now?
Well, the goal of our board members, we have actually a new committee, we have some young people who have joined our board, and the goal is to reopen the train station as a hotel. It won't be happening in my lifetime, but and it's probably a hotel that would probably clean up your bank account to spend a night there, because it's probably going to be close to $1,000 to get a room there for a night, and that's.
I hope there's lunch.
Yeah. So it's going to be, if that goes ahead, there's engineers and the people there almost daily looking at it and doing plan drawings and doing all kinds of stuff to see. And it just may not happen because it just maybe too much stuff has to be done and too many exits put in that's gonna change the building, too many fire escapes. And that's one reason we had this picture out right now, because this building shows you the fire escapes. Here at the top, you can see the fire escapes that they had. This is out of the dormitories. These steps, and they used to have to get to the ground. Now they had this come down to here, and a big step here. Now we were told, and I know it wasn't the truth. They had this little step here, and there was another ladder laying across here, and it had to get down to the ground. There's another ladder laying across here, and they would put the ladder down and go down. But someone told us they had a baggage cart sitting there. You could jump into the baggage cart. And that's on wheels, so you can take the big bag.
So that doesn't meet today's code.
Not, didn't meet today's codes, not at all, not in the least. So, now the entire building was the contractor who built the train station in 1900 was a man by the name of Joseph McBay. He was from St. Stephen. He owned a contracting company, and he was hired to build the building. What did it cost to build the McAdam Railway Station in 1900? The center part only, the biggest part, the 2 living ends were added on later. You take some guesses.
25,000.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna hire you to build me a house.
I'm just doing
Any other guesses?
crazy. 100,000.
$30,000.
Oh,
How wasn't that far?
And how long did it take to build it?
5 years?
Any other guesses?
8.
9 months.
Oh, wow.
You couldn't hire somebody to build you a garage. Just they did in 9 months.
Wasn't it an Italian crew that was brought over to do all the stone?
It was this contractor out of St. Stephen, who he had as a crew, I have no idea. And they were stonemasons because the stone was quarried right in McAdam. It was cut down down the rail line where the quarry was, and it was some of the you take a walk around the building, look at the windowsills. Some of them are 12 feet long, and it's one solid piece of granite. It was all measured before they went down to cut it, and then they brought it up and put it on the building. Wow! It just and the building is completely made of brick. Under the granite, it's all brick. No insulation, all brick. Brick and granite. And it's cold. Okay. Now it's often asked, why was such a large building constructed in McAdam, a village of only 1,600 people? Probably smaller than Harvey. Now, during the early years of the century, McAdam's population was twice that of today, and the railroad was a mainstay of the economy. It was a junction for trains traveling east and west between St. John and Montreal, and north and south from St. Stephen to Edmonton. 16 passenger trains passed through the community daily.
Wow.
Daily trains came from New York, Boston, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, St. John, Halifax, as well as local trains. Every train that came into the McAdam Railway Station stopped and was serviced. They were also checked by immigration and customs who worked out of the train station. Did not stop at the border and check the trains, because they wanted a bridge across the water. and they could not check the trains there. Every train stopped at the McAdam railway station. Now besides those 16 passenger trains daily, there was between 30 and 40 freight trains. And every freight train had to stop and be serviced and checked by immigration and customs. When I grew up in McAdam as a kid, it was common to see the immigration and customs at the train station. It was rare, like we didn't go to the border a lot. I think sometimes on Sunday we went over to get a chocolate bar or something at the garage, you know, we'd just go for a drive. And you stop at Canada Customs going over and you stop with them coming back. It was different back then. But back in the heyday, it was at the station. And the trains were famous in McAdam for being late. They were never on time. Now, on the west end of the station, there's a large lunch counter that served refreshments and light lunches to the railway passengers. And that was while the trains were being serviced. And an adjoining dining room was used for the wealthy people and famous people. And the two did not mix. There was a line up on the platform in the front of the station, waiting for people to go into the lunch counter to get something to eat. Usually breakfast was very, very big, and you would have 2 or 3 passenger trains there at the same time. It was never just one train there. It was always a couple of passenger trains, maybe a freight train or 2, because everybody was busy. It never stopped. It never closed down. It never shut down at night. They went day and night. Now on the east side of the station, behind the station, there's a 6-acre man-made pond. Everybody's noticed that? And behind the pond is a fantastic walking trail. Beautiful walking trail. There's a lot of damage to it because of that storm at Christmas time, but they're in the process of cleaning some of the trees that took down, cleaning them up. So I did bring a couple of stories with me. I know most of them by heart, but I will tell you about them. But first I'm going to show you this picture. This picture was taken 1992. This is the picture, you can't see this, you see the roof of the station? This is a train. Maybe you may recognize it. You can just pass that around. That is a Canadian Pacific Railway vintage passenger train. That train came to McAdam in 2022, 2 years ago. It came from Alberta. It came on a Sunday afternoon in October, and we didn't know what day it was coming. We knew it was coming through, and of course it stopped in McAdam. First time in 35 years that Canada Customs were at the McAdam railway station to clear a train. 2 custom officers were there, and that train sat there for about 2 hours. 500 people were there to see it, take pictures of it, and it was fantastic. They had 2 engines on it. It came from Calgary. It came from the head office of CP Rail. And it had 14 cars on it, 2 engines and 14 cars. And it had, the cars are all named. There was the Van Horn car, there's a car that was for dining, a car for sleeping, a car for exercise equipment in it. It had everything. And it was going on its way to St. John. That was on a Sunday it came. And on Tuesday, that train came back full of passengers. Well, I shouldn't say full, but all the officials from New Brunswick NB Southern Rail, from CPR Rail, and we were told they're going to stop at the station, and they had 15 minutes to stop. Well, an hour and a half later, after they were there, Mr. Creel, the president of Canadian Pacific Railway in Canada, was very impressed. He said he'd never seen so many CPR artifacts in one spot. He'd never seen, he couldn't believe what we had. And he stayed there for quite a while. And Mr. Creel and Mr. Irving came on the train, but they'd sent a helicopter to pick him up, take him back, because he was not going back to Alberta on the train with anybody else. So they come in, they went upstairs to the room we had redone on the 2nd floor, and they sat there and they had a chat with our treasurer. And they each donated $50,000 towards the restoration of the train station. Which is a big boost for us. Yeah. So that money went into the pot for the geothermal heating, and so anyway, so that's it. Anybody have any questions?
How was it heated, like before you get this? How do you heat it now before you're putting it
well, but right now we're still using it. There's a boiler, an electric boiler in the basement. And it has all the all the rooms have radiators,
Okay,
and those are what heat up the radiators. Now, it's all been disconnected on the upper 2 floors. The only floor that has any heat is the main floor, ground floor. So that's, we're still using the radiators, and those radiators will stay in the building after the geothermal heating comes in. They're part of the building. They're old, they're from 1900. So the heating system is going to be behind those radiators, whatever it takes for geothermal, I have no idea.
okay.
No, I'm just anxious for them to come, so I like to see them, all these, we have 29 more wells to be drilled in front of the station in the village park, and, should be interesting to see how they do this, and how they lift the rails to put tracks up and all these new stuff underneath them. It should be
Wow, yeah.
quite interesting.
Can you talk a little bit about that one room that you showed us for single women? That special room?
Oh, the single ladies waiting room.
Single
Because
ladies.
you know the single ladies were not allowed to wait in the waiting room with men, with married women, or with children? Do you know why? They say, you guess why? Besides the obvious.
Smoking.
But back in the early 1900s, when single ladies smoked or chewed tobacco, they could not do it in public. And they could chew and smoke to their heart's content in that waiting room. They had a lot of spittoons in there for them, and they even smoked cigars in there. And there were spittoons in there, and the last manager of the railroad station, Jim McCracken, anybody ever remember him? He passed away now 10 or 12 years ago. He used to tell us all kinds of stories. And he said the staff there, the most of the budget they spent was to buy new spittoons, because the girls refused to clean them. They threw them in the pond, and they had to go keep buying new spittoons, especially the ladies waiting.
Did most of your employees come from McAdam at that time, or did a lot kind of come in and stay there?
The very first manager of the hotel, this is the only hotel, the only CPR building, hotel, whatever they owned in Canada, that had a female manager. And all through the years, all the managers at the McAdam railway station were female. Now, the very first manager was a girl, a lady, a young girl, she was early 20s. Her name was Flora Grant. We only had 3 managers over the life of the train station. And Flora Grant was in Montreal working for CPR. She was in the restaurant waiting on tables or whatever and talking to the people that were there. And a couple of the officials from CPR were there, and they noticed her. And they were very impressed with the way she was presenting herself to the public and talking to people. And they offered her the job to come to McAdam when they finished building the building to manage the staff there. And she accepted, and she lived in McAdam for a long time. She lived in the station. One of the rooms said she could choose whichever room she wanted in the hotel, and that's where she lived. She, all kinds of things that she did. There was they had a program in McAdam, during the First World War. I've got some stuff here with me, a few other things. During the First World War, they had a program, the government was not prepared for war, and therefore they did not have the money to fight a war, which we're quite familiar with governments all over the place. So they had a program, and it was called, I have an actual article here someplace, I thought it was kind of cute to bring, to buy a machine gun, for the communities to buy machine guns. And they had to, they needed $1,000 to buy a machine gun, and it would be sent overseas with the troops, or sent over to the troops that were already there. So McAdam Railway Station did a big project, and they, to buy a machine gun. They raised enough money to buy 1.5 machine guns. They raised over about $1,500. So they sent the money to Ottawa. We have a copy of the letter, the thank you letter that came back from Ottawa, thanking the community for doing that. And they requested that the machine gun go to the 26th Battalion. That was mostly New Brunswickers. And they promised to do that if possible. And then we kept the rest of the money in McAdam until they could make enough money to finish off that to buy a second machine gun. I never knew that. I found the letter and amongst going through stuff. You find all kinds of things when you're going through papers and just stuff you couldn't believe. We have a great, anybody seen our exhibit at the station on World War I? It's in it's a war exhibit. It has the bridge with the drum. It has the soldiers in there. That parts from World War I. And again, we are getting, I believe another family has found the certificate that their grandfather or somebody had received from the railway for fighting in the war. So we'll be adding another person to that exhibit we have there sometime this year, as soon as we get the information from them and get more things. Maybe find another wall to hang the other exhibit on, but that's what we are doing with that exhibit. It is a fantastic exhibit. And I helped work on that, researched, did a lot of work on that. So it's things I never knew. The government did not have money to fight in the war. Canadian Pacific Railway loaned the federal government money to fight World War I. They had more money than the government. I never knew that before. And they made, I brought all that stuff. They made monuments. This is Canadian Pacific Railway in the war. This is a monument in Vancouver Railway Station. The one we have in McAdam is the bronze tablet.
Yeah.
This is made of bronze. It's the same thing. It's the angel carrying the soldier.
Wow.
This is and they have a lot. They made 22 of these, not these, but like we have in McAdam, 22 total bronze tablets, and they put them at places all across the country, all around the world. There's some in England. There's some of the train stations there. In any place where there were troops, any place there was a lot of fighting and battles, a lot of places.
Do you say you had one in Canada?
McAdam has a smaller one. I think I have a picture of that one as well. McAdam's is much smaller. I hit that a minute ago. We didn't even know what it was. This is what McAdam's looked like. It was a plaque. It was in the park in front of the station. 3 coats of paint on it. It had originally been placed at the headquarters building in St. John, New Brunswick, which was the headquarters for CPR in New Brunswick, and that was there. And somebody had approached us. They brought a certificate. It's the size of this, and it was a little certificate. It had a picture of a plaque on it, and it went to a retired railroad worker, or they were working wherever, when they've had them for years after the First World War, thanking them for their service to their country from the CPR. And somebody brought that to us. They were cleaning out their grandfather's house, and they came across this piece of paper. No idea what it was. So that's how we started building this exhibit we have, this military exhibit. So we looked at this, and we contacted somebody, and we had some of the old retired railroad workers were on our committee, and we were trying to find out what can we do with this information, what can we do with these things. And we found out that everybody that left their job with the railway and went enlisted in the war and fought in the war received one of those. There's thousands. So one of the workers that was sitting there, he was in his late 80s, and he said, I've seen that picture before. I've seen that plaque. Just like that. He said, I don't know where I saw that. So we were there talking, and he gets up, he leaves the meeting, he walks out, and I said, what? Was it something we said or what? We don't know. So anyway, he comes right back in. He says, your plaque's right down there in front of the station. It's in the park in front of the station. Couldn't read it. I don't know what it says. So we had it, we contacted, and then we really get into this information. Really found out what happened. And this plaque was for the people from CPR who did not survive the war. They enlisted. They fought in the war. They didn't get a certificate. These are the ones that never came back. So we contacted the government, and they gave us the name of a person in Halifax that could probably restore this for us. Hot day in July, we had a tent for her to cover the sun off her, and she came up and she looked at it and she took out a little thing and brushed it and said, paint, I can't touch it, sorry. Back in her car, back to Halifax. It was an expensive car trip for us, but anyway. But she did give us the name of somebody else who might be able to help us. And this other lady came. She spent 2 weeks in McAdam in July, extremely hot temperature. She was in our, we put her in the baggage room, had to seal the room up. She was in complete hazmat equipment, mask, gloves, everything. and she restored this in 2 weeks.
Let's see.
She never said, and she told us, if anybody touches that, slap them. Not coming back. This is what it looks like today. This is the bronze tablet. It is made of solid bronze. It weighs about 400 pounds. We have it inside the building, protected from the weather, and it is a fantastic exhibit.
What's the difference?
You can read what it says.
Why do you think they painted over it?
They didn't know what it was. They had no idea why it was there, and I'll read to you, I can read to you what it says. I have it written here in bigger print, so I can. It's,
Pretty green as opposed to bright.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't pass this around.
Maybe it was tarnished.
Yeah, really pretty, that's what
Like to spruce it up.
It says, I have it right in here. Oh, I have it right here. This tablet commemorates those in the service of the Canadian Pacific Railway Company who, at the call of king and country, left all that was dear to them, endured hardship, faced danger, and finally passed out of sight of men by path of duty and self-sacrifice, giving up their own lives that others might live in freedom. Let those who come after see to that their names be not forgotten.
I can't believe
That is
someone
what is
paint
on
over
that
that.
tablet.
Yeah, really.
So we have that inside of our building, and we have, now just give you some stats here. In the Great War, there was 11,340 railway workers who enlisted for war service. There was 1,116 killed, 2,105 injured. Ones that returned and back to work, 7,573. And those that were decorated, 385. That's a lot of manpower for one company. Now in McAdam, I don't know what it was like elsewhere, when the men signed up and went to war, their families received their complete pay all the time they were at war during the First World War.
Wow.
During the Second World War, if they enlisted and went to war, they did not receive the pay that they did in the First World War. The time the Second World War came, the railroad was probably needed more, did a bit more money from the government.
Yeah.
They also had the women worked the rail yards in McAdam during both wars, kept the trains moving. The trains had to keep going. And there'd always been a joke around McAdam, it took 10 women to do the work of 25 men. And I think that was true. So they went to war, and we had, this is a book that we put out when we unveiled that tablet, we had a lot of people there. CFB Gagetown came and helped us with our actual
Gosh, that's
bridges.
beautiful.
They brought the 3 mannequins in that room, were given to us by Gagetown, and their uniforms are original World War I uniforms, which they also supplied to us. So we had them on board with this exhibit, and it is fantastic. And it's just, everybody that reads it, they usually leave with a tear in their eye. And we have, some of these people are from the Harvey area. Willard Wilson, we're from Harvey Station. And some here from St. John. Anybody with any questions yet?
Well, I just have one question going back to the dining area, the elite dining area. And I remember the color of the dining room.
It's a gold color. The paint's similar to.
Red?
That's the
Oh,
fancy.
that's the dining room. It is red. It is red. Anybody know why it's painted red? And it was, that's the original color. Because when they were tearing the room apart, because after they closed the dining room in 1958, they put petitions up. They put carpet on the floor, did not damage the floor. It's the only original floor in the building from 1900 that's still being used. And so luckily they covered it with carpet, did not damage it, put petitions up and made it into offices. And they left the red vibrant paint on the wall. No, they did paint it over it, but the original was red. Any reason why it's red? Why did it red paint in the dining room? An elegant, expensive dining room. Red stimulates your appetite. Eat more than a red. Every time I go into a restaurant now, I look at the color of the walls. More expensive. So you're going to eat more in a room that makes you hungrier.
That's why a lot of the Italian restaurants are. No, yeah.
What was the employee numbers like in the 20s, 30s, or?
The number of people, it's,
Who were working
I
there?
really don't know, but I know there was hundreds of men that worked there.
No.
They worked there from all over. They- It's just that building never closed, it never stopped, the trains never stopped going. There was, we have another exhibit on the train wrecks, train accidents. I know everybody's gonna ask me, how come there's not the picture of the train wreck that happened in Harvey? The train went off the bluff into the river, into the lake. We don't have a picture of it.
They have a picture of them.
We have pictures on the wall of train wrecks that happened around the auxiliary train was stationed in McAdam. You ever heard that expression, auxiliary train? It's a train that went to train wrecks, like the first responders. It's, the auxiliary train was stationed in McAdam. It consisted of an engine, they had a sleeping car, dining sleeping car. It had all kinds of flat cars, and then those flat cars were loaded. They took track with them, they took wheels for the trains with them, they took didn't have in the early days, didn't have a lot of the equipment to take. And they took the shovels and whatever they were going to need. Their job was to get those rails laid and relayed and get the rail lines open. Because nothing was moving until those rails were open. And that was their job, to reopen the rail lines. They could be gone for weeks. When there was a train wreck in McAdam, there was a whistle in the rail yard. That whistle blew nonstop. When I was a kid growing up, and even in high school, well, the high school yearbook was called The Whistle. That whistle blew in the morning when it was time to go to work. We'll say 7 o'clock in the morning, time to get to work. 7:30, time to start work. 12 o'clock, time to get ready to go home, go for lunch. 1 o'clock, be back from lunch. 1:30, start work again. 5 o'clock, get off work. It went all day. But when there was a train wreck, they blew 3 blasts on that whistle. And the men that worked there, they knew there was a wreck. They didn't know where, didn't know what they were going into, and they had, during the daytime hours, that train had 20 minutes to be moving on the rail. And they had 40 minutes during the nighttime hours to be moving. They had their own cook that went with it. He wasn't a chef, he was a cook. And as soon as that whistle blew, the owner of the local grocery store, there was no Save Easy then, it was just a little grocery store. He went to that store, he had a contract with the railway, and he started getting food together. Standard groceries. He would get it together, start putting stuff, and they'd come to the truck and pick it up. And if you weren't there when that train was ready to go, in your 20 minutes or whatever, how much time you had, you missed it. And that train went. And it was men sometimes who didn't know what you were going to.
So how far would they be responsible for going?
They went from McAdam, from St. John, New Brunswick, all through central New Brunswick, up as far as Edmundston, and into Maine, all the way to the Quebec border in Maine.
Wow.
And there was a lot of train wrecks back in the days. And the exhibit we have several pictures of train wrecks. We have a picture of a train wreck that occurred in Ottawa, Maine. It was a head-on collision between a freight train and a passenger train. 50-some people died in that wreck. It's the worst wreck that ever occurred in the state of Maine to this day. And then you have some minor wrecks. There was one right in front of the station. There was shunting and boxcar went off the tracks. That's considered a wreck. So, but most of them were out of town. They've had wrecks. I remember they had a train wreck down around Thompson's Corner in that area where the tracks going back there. I think it was a train going to the brewery. Everybody went to that wreck. Whether they should have been there or not.
Going to or from?
But anyway, but it was, because the stuff that was passing through the station, everything went by rail. Everything. The oil trains, they went through McAdam up until that accident at McAntic a few years ago. Oil trains come through there daily, nighttime, they never stop.
They started up again? There's still a few.
The oil trains?
Well, most of it's going by truck now, a lot of the oil's going by truck. But personally, I feel safer by train.
Yeah, there's still a few oil tankers though.
Yeah.
The train wreck that was, what, 2000, I mean, years ago?
A few years ago, yeah.
Apparently they were empty oil.
It was what?
There were empty oil cars on that, and that was unusual.
It was, that was just a error. Complete error, that wreck. And it was a train company out of Montreal, out of Quebec. It was out of Montreal. They've been, received several warnings before, they have been fined before. They had one engineer on the train, and he left it to go to sleep. And it was just a, shouldn't have been on, it shouldn't, you say it shouldn't have been on the road, it shouldn't have been on the road.
Did that train come through Harvey?
It did, it went to St. John, it went right straight through Harvey. It went down, I went on Sunday and came back on a Tuesday morning, about 11 o'clock, and there was I bet there was 2,000 people in the camp taking pictures of that. And that's not a great picture, but we did have some great pictures given to us of that thing.
How far did that one go?
This one?
Yeah.
But this is just a vintage train, I don't know what they do with it. But as a result of this visit from these, when CPR went to meet with the Irvings in St. John, because they owned the NB Southern, that resulted in, they made a deal, contract, they have a contract together, they're working together now. All the trains are going through Harvey now, you know, so all the crates, all the containers on them, they're coming off the ships in St. John. And they're going to Western Canada, and they're going into Mexico. And then the new rail line is called, there's no longer no CPR, it's CP and KC.
Yeah, Kansas City.
CP, Canadian Pacific and Kansas City. KC.
Isn't there supposed to be a whole lot more trains start moving through? Somebody just told me that the other day.
Oh, they have been, there's been a lot more.
But even more again, I don't know,
I
someone
don't
just
know,
mentioned that
the
the other
trains used to
day.
go through here, I mean, we used to be at the station, and a train would come in, oh, that's a big one, it's got 4 engines on it, oh, this one's got 6 engines, we're stuck in here for 2 hours with that big one. Now the trains, most of them have 1 engine, maybe 2, and most of the trains now are 2 miles long. They have all new engines,
Yeah.
and they're pulling big, heavy
There's
loads.
always 2 and maybe 3.
Yeah.
There's always 2.
Yeah.
Maybe
And we got
3.
some hookup, well, they're doing a lot of shunting in that area and stuff, but there is a big changes being made with the railroad, and the railroad's traffic is coming back.
Isn't that wonderful?
If passenger service would come back, it'd be great.
Wouldn't that, yeah,
Yeah, I used to take the passenger train from Montreal to Harvey, and they dropped me off at Harvey, even though there wasn't really a station there anymore.
Oh, before, but after the station, everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, my sister, her daughter went to university, so when the train stopped here about 1996, so it must have been 94, 95, she graduated from high school, went to university in Quebec, I forget the name, but outside of Montreal, outside of whatever. Anyway, so her mother said, this is great, it's right near the train station, and she can come home every time, 1 trip home by train. They took the trains off. So, it was, anybody with any other questions about anything else?
I've got a question, but I grew up at Smith Store, so I don't quite get about the trains back.
Good, excellent, good. Well, I worked at the train station in McAdam the year before I graduated from high school, and I worked in the lunch counter, it was the only thing open. The dining room, I never even knew there was a dining room in the building, and I worked there the entire summer in the lunch counter.
for heaven's sake.
The dining room at that time had been made into offices, I was not allowed to be, my dad did not work for the railway. My grandfather did, he lost a leg in an accident there back in the early 1940s, and caught between a couple of boxcars, I guess it was. And I never knew him at all, so we would be killed if we were caught in the railroads.
When was the last year that train station was open up there?
1996 was the last passenger train come through there,
96.
via rail.
Yeah,
At that time, there was nothing on the station, there was no, the lunch counter, everything was closed at the station except the waiting room. And they'd taken the area in the waiting room, that's where the newsstand was, they had that restored a few years ago. And so they'd taken that area, and moved the newsstand out of there and made that for an office for Via Rail. That's the only thing that was open in the waiting room.
Elsie, when you have these restorations done, is it through an historical society, I mean, like a group that knows how to create from, like, I'm thinking of like, Lewisburg, places like that where they reconstruct and.
We do have people, we have contacts in the government. Everything we're doing is done through the Brunswick Heritage Branch. We don't do anything in there without their approval, because we're looking for money to do things. And they aren't giving money to things that we're changing. You can change within a reason for safety reasons or something, because everything was made back in that way. But it's, we go through them. Now, you mentioned over here, these books are full of artifacts?
No, information about families.
Okay, so do you have artifacts?
No, we don't focus on artifacts, we just have a few.
We have thousands.
Yeah.
And we have, and right now, and just to let you know, I expanded out, I don't know how. When I joined the station commission 15 years ago, the first meeting I went to was in June. I didn't want to be bored, so I retired in May. In June, I went to the first meeting with somebody, and they were talking about, they used to do a Christmas program and they decorated homes in the community, and there were 5 houses, and you go around visiting at Christmas. And that was, I didn't even realize it was a program sponsored by the station. Well, I had my house in there 2 different times, and anyway, so they were at the meeting, they said, well, they weren't gonna make enough money, and they couldn't get any people, they rented houses to do. They did it for 3 or 4 years, and nobody would do it anymore. So they're gonna drop that program. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, why are they gonna drop the program? And then the people doing it said, well, it's a great moneymaker for us. And I said, well, why are they dropping that? It's a great moneymaker. Stupidly. Don't ever go to a first meeting and say something. And the price said, why did you decorate the station? And they looked at me like I had 2 holes in my head. And one lady on the board said, nobody's gonna come to see the station. Last year was our 15th year. We had over 40,000 people. Next year is going to last for 2 weeks. We're starting to try, our board meeting's tomorrow night, and we're going to expand that for going 2 straight weeks. Because we had 2,000 people come after it was over, going to see it.
How far away do they come from?
Pardon me?
Right here. How far away do they come from to the decoration? Just like local or? Do you know where they come from, all these people that come to see the train station?
Oh, they come from all over, we've had people come from Nova Scotia.
At Christmas.
At Christmas, to see
Yeah.
the station,
Yeah.
Nova Scotia,
Yeah.
a lot, Prince Edward Island, we've had buses, PEI from Nova Scotia, we had buses. We had, the most amazing thing that just took my eye about 4 years ago, it was on a Saturday afternoon, and that's the biggest day because that's when the Lions do their craft fair, and they do a dinner at the Lions Club, they have all kinds of stuff going on, it's the Santa Claus parade, and just so much going on. And we had 6 buses sitting in the parking lot in front of the McAdam railway station. Never had 6 buses in McAdam before. It was just amazing, and they was there, and like, all these people, and they wouldn't leave. They kept coming in and going through and buying, and the gift shop almost ran out of stuff. Like, it was just amazing. And the people and they come back the next year. So this year we are going for 2 full weeks. We gotta find something to do on the second weekend to keep people there. Now, how many people were there this past year? Did you like the lights?
Beautiful.
We have new lights on the station. Our new operations manager. One of our members on our board, he's in his early 80s. He's always been putting the lights on the outside, climbing up on a ladder to the roof, reaching down and putting lights up. And half of them are burnt out. Some were the white ones, some were the yellow ones. They looked horrible. So he got on the phone and called somebody, and then this and that. Found out we could put lights on it, and the lights are permanent. All it just takes is your little telephone to change the light colors. Over 1 million different varieties of colors you can put in there and change them. So we brought to the meeting we had at the end of, what would have been in October, our October meeting, and brought them in. Every person on that board said, yes, get them, order them. And the treasurer said, find out if they can be here by the 16th of November, because that was when the Christmas show started. And the guy said, we'll guarantee it. They had them a little bit late that day, but the next morning they were on. So that night after, did you stay for the evening after?
I was there, I think, the second day. And I think there was somebody outside on a lift still stringing some
They were
lights.
still stringing them up, but they got them up, and then now, if you go up there tonight or any night, in January, they were in purple and blue, because January was, dementia month, dementia, Alzheimer's, or that's, we did that, so we find out what every month is for. February, we had heart month, up until Valentine's. Then Valentine's it became not just red, pink, and white. And then now we have it on for, this is Black History Month. So we have the colors for Black History Month, and that's what they are until the end of this month. Now, next month, I don't know what it is, but we kind of put it in a little blurb in the local paper, so people know why we get those colored lights each month. Now, of course, St. Patrick's Day, they're gonna be green. You know that, so we try to do that. But, getting back to that night, the night of the Saturday night, after, nobody left the building, couldn't get people to leave, they were outside taking pictures of the lights and the Santa Claus parade to get over. McAdam Village had fireworks. They were left from Canada Day, or no, from New Brunswick Day, they had got fireworks and it rained and they didn't use them. So they had these extra fireworks and they wanted to use them. So they used them that night. So they couldn't use them over the station because we couldn't get rid of all the people up there. You can't do them where the people are. So they did them down in front of the park. So if you stood here and the station's on your right and you took your picture from here, you've got the station and the fireworks right there. Absolutely beautiful. Just unreal. So this next year, I hope to see every one of you there for the show. We don't know what we're gonna do on the second Saturday, but on the first Saturday, the Lions will be doing their craft show as usual. We might try to find another group that wants to do a craft show on the second week, and they do dinners at the Lions Club for buses and things like that, so hopefully.
So if passenger trains were to miraculously start running, would the station be able to accept them?
You're right. We used to have train rides. We had a train ride, when I first started up there, they used to do a train ride every September. And it was a train ride done by the, we left McAdam Station, went to St. Stephen, and then it came back, and we did a dinner in the train station. Now, half of the profits from that train ride, the Irvings provided the train and all the staff to run it, and half of the profits from the train ride came to the station, and the other half went to the Boys and Girls Club in St. Stephen. Probably, oh my goodness, 6-7 years ago now, we did a Polar Express train. We were contacted by the Irvings in St. John. They do one down there. They just go from the station downtown, wherever that is, down out to Grand Bay, and then they sit for a few minutes, then they go back. That's it. Well, we did one in McAdam, and McAdam Station was the place designated to do the Elves dinner for everybody on that train. We did 3 train rides that day. It only went from the station out as far as Thompson's Corner, around that area, and then it couldn't turn there, so then it would just had an engine on both ends, so then it would come back and back to the station. It was the most magical event I've ever seen in my life. There was not a dry eye in that building that day. It was for the Children's Wish Foundation. And we had, before we even did it, we had, well, Frank Carroll, my brother, he couldn't organize anything. We had staff there, we had 3 sittings for the dinner, and it was, ever seen the movie Elf?
Yeah.
What did they eat at the Elf's dinner?
Okay.
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
What was on it? Candy. Candy and chocolate. We did cheat and make some regular spaghetti sauce for the adults. But the kids and Ganoms provided candy. I never saw so much candy at the Ganoms in my life. They had candy there, and we had 3 sittings. The place was packed. The tickets for those 3 train rides sold out in 10 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
And I think they were $50 or $60 a person. They were just fantastic. And we did 3 dinners. We had 2 weeks before that actual event, we had 70 people from all around this province call to see if they could come and help. We had people from Edmundston, Bathurst, Moncton. They wanted to come and help do that dinner, and it was fantastic. You couldn't believe it. And I know there was a child there someplace that got their wish. And there was people that came. There was grandparents, and there was the kids, the parents, and the kids, and the 10 more relatives, and they all had matching pajamas on. They came to go on the train, and it was amazing. There was one little girl, she wasn't any more than 3 years old, and she had her ticket right in her hand. And she was coming in to eat first. They always ate first. And I said, dear, why don't you give that to your dad? Because if you lose it, you can't get on the train. And she didn't speak. She said, are you sure? And she hung on, and she ate the spaghetti and candy with her ticket right in the grasp in her hand. And it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful, no rain, but it was beautiful on the train. One stipulation, there's to be no Santa Claus in the station. Santa Claus was on the train.
Ah,
So we didn't have to worry about getting the Santa Claus. So
Yeah.
anyway, it turned out great. And then COVID came the next year. We couldn't attend it. But I know they did one back in St. John last year, and it's no longer called the Polar Express. That's the new name. So I'm assuming they got knuckle slap for using the Polar Express logo. That's a Disney. But we can find another name pretty quick.
yeah.
So we're hoping we can get something back like that this year. That would be great.
A few years ago, you had train rides from McAdam, was it to Harvey and back?
Yes, I used to do a lot of train rides with
Yeah,
train.
the friend in Dartmouth that came,
Yeah.
really a trained person that came.
Yes,
up.
I went on one of those train rides with Harvey. Working on the train. The year that McAdam was designated for New Brunswick Day, the government chooses one community in the province to be the place where all the action's gonna happen, and McAdam was chosen one year. So the government got the train, passenger train, and all the government premier and everybody came by train to McAdam. And that train, instead of sitting there all day, they gave train rides from McAdam to St. Croix back for the kids, $1 or something, $2 or loony, and the train went all afternoon back and forth to St. Croix.
They used to do the one from the junction to McAdam,
They used to come on yes, they would train, and they'd come and have a tour, we did some coffee and tea and some sweets,
and
and
then they would do dinner
they'd
at
have
the
a tour,
junction.
went back to Junction.
Dinner down there.
When we did the one for St. Stephen, we used to get on the train, I get on the train two of the years, we'd get on the train and just kind of talk to the people or whatever, and we went down as far as Watt Junction. It's only about, the train only goes about 5 miles an hour, but it just goes really slow. And we went down to Watt Junction, and that's, the cowboys come on horses. So the train has to stop, and they rob the train. So you're sitting on the train, you don't know what's going on, it stops, it's 4 or 5 passenger cars. And you're sitting there, saying, oh, wonder where we stop, maybe there's a car going crossing or something, but anyway. And all at once you see the engineer walking by, tied up with a rope, and these cowboys walking by. So then they get on the train, and they proceed to try to rob everybody on the train, and then the sheriff arrives, she's a woman, she catches them all. Anyway, and then they do run, the horses are running around the train. Riding around the train and stuff, it's a lot of fun. And then the train goes on and it comes back, we always did a dinner in the train station for those that want to have a dinner. So we had 2 rooms full of people to have a dinner, and all the cowboys and the sheriff, they would come and have dinner as well, without the horses.
Sounds like whatever special event you had were like huge success.
Well, some of them are really, you just get the ideas and get people there to carry them through. Now, this decorating thing, I never dreamed it would go like it has now. And it's just of this world, so it's getting bigger and bigger. So,
There was a special train, or, I don't know, what did you say, a special train where about 4 cars went through last fall and had dinosaurs and animals painted on the outside. Do you know
That
what
was true,
was?
that was, I tell you, that was a train the Irvings loaned to a train company they do a Polar Express train in someplace,
Okay.
I don't know, it was Maine or New Hampshire, and they sent that train to them to use.
Okay, yeah, you see them go by, but like.
I'm sure they
you don't
rented
know
it
what
to-
they are, these special trains.
Yeah, I saw that, I was actually stuck at the
And
crossing.
every once in a
And
while, there'll be one go by, you think, oh, that's some of the Irvings.
in fact, just before Christmas, I got stuck at, I'd been to see Harvey play basketball in McAdam, and I rushed out and I hadn't had supper yet, so I got right to the crossing, and this train was there, and there was 2 cars ahead of me, and waited, it was a long train, I thought, oh, gotta be at least 2 miles long, that one. And the very last car on the train was one of those container things, and it had written on each one, CP, and the and sign, KC. It's the first car I've seen that has that, their new name on it. I went to the end of the train to see it.
There's only 2 trains a day going here now.
Not going to at night.
Not really.
Yeah.
We sleep right beside the train tracks.
Must be sleeping right through it, Judy.
So do I, because,
Yeah.
well, there's a lot of action, they're moving a lot in McAdams, the shunting and moving them around all night.
But there's
Getting ready to go.
maybe 3 at the most, but there's one that goes up right after supper, the big long one. And then there's one coming down now about 7:30 in the morning.
We used to have a big long one, we used to get stuck with that at the station, because they'd come in around, sometimes around 5 o'clock, maybe 4:30, and we were open till 6. And then that train would come in, and if you were there having a tour, you're stuck. And it could be an hour and a half before that train would, because it stops. It's, yeah, it
There's
stops.
a lot of traffic through the village with the trains, I have to wait for the train in Harvey.
They stop in McAdam, every train stops. They get serviced and stuff there and change crew.
So does the engineer come from St. John to McAdam and then back down?
No, he goes from St. John to McAdam, there's a bunkhouse in McAdam behind the
Okay.
station up by the pond. And
Because they
then,
don't go into the States.
no,
the
and
engineers
there's
go-
American crew sleeping in the bunkhouse,
Yeah, okay.
and they take the train into the States. Now, the States, there's a big, X-ray machine, that train goes through an X-ray machine, so it goes very, over the bridge, and then after, off the bridge is a huge X-ray machine that train goes through. They caught a young kid, about 14 years old, sleeping in a boxcar a few years ago.
So that would X-ray the big containers that are going through too?
Yeah.
See if there's
Everything.
cars in them?
Everything's X-ray, yeah.
See if there's cars, yeah, on their way to Montreal.
Are
you planning something?
With all
just wonder what
the,
they
with all the
do
years
today.
that you've been involved with the station, what is it that gives you the biggest high? What's the payback to you?
It's just seeing the people come and how happy they are, and they can't believe this huge station is in this little village in the backwoods of the Brunswick, because they've been saying, why did they bring a little station here? Like, come on, but I'm glad they did. And I've got to read you this little article I found. I knew about this, but I had never talked about it before. I'll put it here in the front, I'm sure. It's, oh, anybody here belong to the local Lions Club? This is something, this is dated December the 4th, 1930. It's a St. Croix Courier. It says, McAdam has first Lions Club. Organization of international Lions service clubs throughout Maritimes commences at railway station. Following a number of preliminary conferences, the final details in connection with the organization of the first international Lions service club in the Maritime provinces were completed at a banquet in the CPR Hotel, McAdam, on Monday evening. The charter members are all live wires in the railway town, and the new club has got away to a good start with every member enthusiastic. It tells you here the chief organizer has just completed the work of starting new clubs in Danforth and Vanceboro, Maine, and on leaving McAdam plans to organize clubs in the larger centers in the Maritimes, with St. John next on its itinerary. The first community work to be undertaken by the new McAdam Lions Club is the staging of a charity ball on December the 15th. And that's what I'd like to do at the station. Committees are now at work arranging for the ball details, of which will be announced in a few days. Proceeds are for the relief of needy citizens of McAdam. So that's the first Lions Club in Atlantic Canada. Wow. At the McAdam railway station. 1930.
What year did you say was built? The train station?
Between 1900 and 1920.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was, kind of neat. It's something I had heard of, but. Oh, it's in this article here. This is an article taken from the St. Croix Courier, which was the newspaper from St. Stephen, and it's dated January 1885. And it's describing McAdam's entry into the 20th century. McAdam Junction is soon to part with a feature which has made it famous all over Canada and the United States. It has long been famous as a village without a street and a highway leading to the outside world. It had recently become a separate parish of York County, and now it proposes to lease from the Canadian Pacific Railway the old abandoned railway from McAdam to Vanceboro, Maine, and use it for a highway road. If the new parish council would only find some means by which to overcome McAdam's other distinguishing feature, a long and weary waiting for trains by all those who enter its bounds, their name would find an added place in the memory of all men. Trains were notorious for being late. You knew when you were coming to McAdam, you were never going to be on time. So McAdam was famous for not having roads, for no streets. All they had was train routes.
So,
Only way to go.
so Elsie, my question is with the growth of this,
With the what?
with the growth of the station, et cetera, and all the notoriety, do you see things come into McAdam more in terms of the population? Do you see people moving in? I mean, you know, that whole ordeal with Scotiabank closing McAdam? Or just
People, we have so many new, I don't know anybody in McAdam now. Hardly know a soul. You used to go down to the post office for 2 hours, you talk to everybody, now you don't know anybody. There's so many people living in McAdam. House goes on the market and sold in 2 days. Like, it's just unreal. And they're just sold for whatever people put on them for price. It's amazing.
Are they all from Ontario?
No, we've got people from, a lot of people from British Columbia, careful, a lot from
Yeah, no,
Ontario.
actually, you're right, British Columbia, because,
British Columbia is another place they're coming to.
Yeah.
We had a couple from Spain that was there a couple of years ago, but the lady had, she was originally from Canada, and her husband was from Spain, but they lived in Spain. And her parents lived in St. Andrews, so they sold the house they bought in McAdam. They were there 4 or 5 years, and then they moved to St. Andrews. But a lot of these new people are helping, volunteering. Now we hire students, all the high school students. We do students in the summertime for tour guides. Our Christmas dinners our 5-course Christmas dinners at Christmas time, students work. And we pay them, they pay pretty good, and they are there working, they're there nonstop, and they love it. It's a little bit of spending money. We pay them more than the minimum wage all summer. Kids get a little bit more than the minimum wage. If they're returning for a second year, they get a little bonus. If they're returning for the 3rd year, they get another little bonus. So it's, we had an amazing group of kids last summer. It was the best we've had for years and years.
How many students do you?
We had, I think we had 8 last year, for the summer. So do you folks hire students for anything?
Yeah, we have 2.
Okay, here.
Here, because this is a visitor center as well as
Right, yeah.
our office, so it's open all summer long.
And we get 2 students because, there's no more, provincial tourist bureaus in the province, but we have 1 or 2 left, I guess, right at the borders. But the village of McAdam has a tourist information center, which is in the train station. So when we apply for funding, we get 2 students to run that tourist center, but they do everything.
That's the story here, right?
Yeah. We actually tried to get some brochures about the train station for here, but
Oh,
somebody was gonna drop them off, but they never did.
okay, I'll make sure you get some this summer.
Yeah. And I assume the students are in McAdam.
Pardon?
I assume the students are from McAdam?
We've had a girl from Harvey last year working for us. We had, one fellow went to, we had one girl who was from St. Stephen, but her sister lives in McAdam. She's married to her family. And she's going to UPEI, or she's just finishing her 2nd year at vet college, veterinarian. She's gonna become a vet for exotic animals. As long as she doesn't bring the snakes with her, just worry about it. So, if she applies this year, which I'm assuming she will, it'll be her 3rd year. We have a young fellow who just started UNV in St. John, and he's already indicated he wants to come back, so to get the same kids back is so much easier.
Yeah,
So much
sure.
less training, and, but we did have a girl from Harvey. I can't remember her name. She lived right downtown, I think.
Get Alden Moller.
She worked there for 3 or 4 years, but she didn't apply last year. I don't know if she finished her training, or if she's still going to school. So I think we had 8 last year. We had 10 or 12, we had 15 kids working those Christmas dinners, because the place was packed. And they just went around, you'd think they've been doing it for all their lives. They knew what to do, they could talk to people, and they made good money with tips. And they did a lot of tips during the summer as well. But, any other questions?
I'm interested in the quarry you were talking about, where they got the rocks.
Yes.
Do people go see that?
If you know where it is, it's in an area that's all grown up by trees.
Yeah.
I would never find it, but I went, a guy in McAdam, 5 years ago, I said, I'd love to get a rock from that quarry for my flower garden. So he said, come on, and jumped in his truck and we went down, it's on where the snowmobile trail is now. It's the real line that was torn out years ago, so it's now the snowmobile trail, so it's on that line, and I don't know where exactly it was, but we kept it apart, and walk up into these trees and into the woods and find it.
It's not part of your display and.
No, but we do have a stone, we have a rock out of there, a piece of granite out of there, we have been on
I've
the
never seen
station.
the quarry.
Now, there's red granite on the corners of each corner of the station, and that's not from our quarry, that's from St. George. So that's where the red granite would come from.
It probably would have been a lot of quarry workers available at that time, because the industry in St. George was at its peak at that time, when it was built. And there'd be a lot of people trained at cutting granite, or not cutting it, but making the square blocks.
Yeah. Oh, they had, well, McAdam, I don't even know where the name McAdam came from? Or McAdam got its name? Nothing exciting. It was, McAdam used to be known as City Camp. It was a lumbering town. It was all lumber camps, all around McAdam, all St. Croix. St. Croix was actually, there was nobody living there, but it was an Indian reservation. But nobody was living on it. And all up and through Canterbury, they were all lumber camps, all around McAdam, wood and lumber. And John McAdam was a politician, he was from St. Stephen, and he owned all these camps. And he was wealthy, and I guess a little bit crooked, but anyway, most politicians are. But anyway, so he was very wealthy, and he hired workers to come to his lumber camps. And they had to come by rail because there was no roads in McAdam. So they got on a train wherever they lived, and they came to McAdam. And when they got off the train, they always asked the conductor, "Is this McAdam's place?" Meaning, is this where John McAdam's lumber camps are? And they say yes. And eventually, they called it McAdam. That's where the name came from. And he was a politician. He was with Sir John A. Macdonald in the federal government, and he was elected there the year Macdonald was in, the year of Confederation. And he was in also provincial politics as well. And he owned a lot of land around these areas. And around this area too. Any more questions? I could talk here for 4 hours.
Thank you so much.
You're very
It's been
welcome.
very informative, and we actually, all of one hand though of your presentation
Oh, well,
here.
thank you very much. Oh, that's great. I'll use that today. And while when you're having your pie, I'm going to tell you, do you know where the name Railway Pie came from? Why it's called Railway Pie?
Came from Boston, isn't it?
Well, in a way, the station was famous for its pie. They had 26 kinds of pie. They had their own chef, and they had their own pastry chef. And this was for the dining room, mostly the dining room only. So people would come in and they would order pie. The trains would come in, and everybody got off the train, and they wanted pie. And they had like, these 26 kinds, so they made all those pies every day, fresh. Boston train came in there every day. People from Boston come in, and what do you think they ordered? Boston cream pie. Well, and they loved it. It was really good. So they went back to Boston. They went on the train wherever they went, and then they come back to Boston, and they raved about the Boston cream pie from the McAdam Railway Station. City of Boston didn't like that. That was their pie. So they sent a delegation from Boston. Came to McAdam. They tried the pie. They never said it was better, but they had an interview with the chef, and they had to make an agreement, and the agreement ended up being they would no longer make Boston cream pie at the McAdam Railway Station. People in Boston were very disappointed, but what could you do? Could have caused an international incident if they didn't agree. So it was probably the first international trade agreement. So anyway, the people from Boston came every day, and they had to eat something else. They didn't get their Boston cream pie, and away they went. And when in the lunch counter, they had a big board where they listed all those 26 kinds of pie. But after that, there was only 25 kinds there. So no Boston cream pie. So everybody else came in, and the Boston train left, and as soon as it pulled out of the rail yards, the sign was turned around. And lo and behold, Boston cream pie was there.
Do you still have the pie recipe books for sale?
Yes, we do.
You do?
Yeah, there's we have lots of them.
Wonderful.
And I brought this little book here I thought somebody may be interested in. This is a book we have at the station too. This is a coffee table book. Now this was done a few years ago by a gentleman from Fredericton. He's a lawyer actually. He's now working at UNB. And he, a little bit of history on him. He lived in Ontario, him and with his mother and his wife and his sister, and he was married, so they moved to Fredericton. And on the way through, they came through the States, and it was an evening when they came through, and the station was closed. And the mother went by, and the mother said, "Whoa, whoa, stop the car, and he thought something terrible happened. And she said, "What's that building?" They turned and they came back, and they drove up to the station, and they looked at it. It was closed, they couldn't get in. So she said, "We're coming back here tomorrow." And the next day, they were in the process of moving. They came back to McAdam and looked at the station. And they got the story from the students that were working about, fundraising and all this stuff. And they were always said, that included, because you want to make money, you gotta tell people about it. So the mother said, his name was Mark Lawman. And his mother said, Mark, you've got to do something to help these people restore that building. So he thought about it, and him and his sister that still lives in Toronto. She was a graphic artist. She did all the graphics for this book and for the other books. Now he decided to write a book. And the book was called, a fiction book. It's called Abigail Massey. His character, he wrote out of his brain, called Abigail Massey. And Abigail she's been told by us, by the Department of Tourism in New Brunswick, she's the Anne of Green Gables of New Brunswick. That's how they refer to her. Now, we've got 8 books now in the Abigail series, and they're fictitious stories, but they're based on true facts. Abigail's a young girl, she's 15 or 16, her parents live in York Mills, it's in the book, and so she gets a job at the station. It's during the Depression, there's no money, and she works there, and she has to live in the station. As a young girl, if you want to work the station, you have to live there. You cannot live at home. Even if you live right in McAdam, you have to live in the station. So it's all about Abigail and the problems she gets into. A lot of the stuff is true, a lot of the true stories are put into the book in more of a fiction way. Like Barbara Ann Scott, we all know who Barbara Ann Scott was?
Oh, yeah.
She actually stayed a night at the hotel in McAdam Station after she won her Olympic gold. And she skated on the pond behind the station.
Really?
And one of the ladies that skated with her is the plays organ in my church, and she told me all about it. She was 5 years old. So anyway, that's the story about Abigail meeting Barbara Ann Scott. And those books have gone all over the place. But anyway, then he decided to make a coffee table book for the older people. So this is the one he made. This is from the station. The one he made for us, he has pictures of us in it and all the information. But this is one from the station, and it has pictures of the station, pictures of some of the workers that worked here, some of the stories from the Abigail books. Like I said, he's now got a nice picture there in the winter. It's got some of the old pictures, the lumbering camps, all kinds of things, the lunch counter.
That's a fantastic lunch counter.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've noticed when you've been in the lunch counter, this is a lunch counter, and you see here the stools, but right above each stool is a little thing here. It's a plaque. Each one of these stools, they're originals, had to be sent to Halifax, be re-chromed and recovered.
Wow.
This is the person or organization that sponsored that. So it's, I don't know what the process was, $200 or $300 each, if not more. So they had no money at that time, it was before I started there. So that's just one of the samples of some of the books that we do. And he's always looking for ways that can help us and do things. So, and the last book of the Abigail series was released 2 years ago. And that was the end, and it was a great book. It's all the whole series, and they're great books for kids.
So did money
10,
come,
8, 9, 10-year-olds around that age, they believe in themselves.
did the money come back to,
I'm sorry?
did the money come back to the restoration project from his book?
Oh, yeah,
Is that what you said?
he's written 8 books and the coffee table book, and every cent that's made from that is to the station.
Wow.
So he's doing what his mother told him. His mother passed away before he got a chance to do it, but he's doing what his mother told him. And he's there all the time, and his wife's not well now, but he doesn't know as much, but he comes to the station all the time.
Nice. So Elsie, one question. What about the ghosts?
The ghost, well, we do a paranormal event here now. We started doing them last year for the first time. People think I'm crazy because there's ghosts, but I have a ghost in my house because it's over in the station. But I have seen one ghost in the station.
You really did.
I certainly did.
You look there.
Was
I know I do. I mean, I believe.
I don't, they don't scare me. I've been in the station at night working in the dark by myself. I mean, the lights on downstairs because there's no lights in the upper 2 floors. We do have some in the hallway now, I guess.
So is he
Yeah.
a local? Is there a story to him?
The ghost was a child,
Oh, okay.
probably be about that tall, a little girl. I believe her name is, what did he tell me his name was? One of the paranormal guys told me when he talked to her, use her name, and he gave me her name, but he'll be back anyway. But I was doing a tour, and I was on the 3rd floor up in the men's dormitory, and they had big crawl spaces for the men, for the air and stuff. I opened the door to this crawl space, and this little girl was standing there. She had on a white dress, long sleeve, dark, like black hair with a big pink bow in it, and she had on, dress was long, all frills on it, like right out of the early 1900s.
So did someone die? Do you know?
There's been murders in the station, there's been lots of.
There has been murders?
Oh, I can tell you a murder story next.
I'd like to hear one.
So anyway, this child was there, and I had about 10 people with me. And there's one, when I opened the thing, I just stepped back, I didn't say anything, it's just a ghost, I just stepped back.
Just a ghost.
So the woman beside me said, what do you see? I said, oh, nothing, and then she stayed away. So, we have had paranormal groups there, and we've had a lot of them in the province want to come and do stuff. A couple of them came quite a few years ago, one group arrived one Sunday, we never knew they were coming, there was 30-some people looking for ghosts.
So what did they do?
Well, that group just walked around and they were just, they had equipment with them and we didn't really know a lot about it and they didn't tell us a lot about what they were doing or whatever and we never got reports from them.
Okay.
And there was another group came after that and then this, maybe 2 or 3 other groups came and we got people kept calling, oh, we're gonna make you famous and all, like, we don't wanna be famous for ghosts.
No,
We wanna be famous for the building.
right.
So, this other group, they're out of St. George, and they're very nice people, and he came and he gave us his proposal, and he looked around, and he told me, yeah, he's seen the little girl I've seen. We have one of our summer students seen the little girl. Didn't believe in ghosts, and they have the Maxwell room, are you familiar with that room, anyway, that room? Anyway, that's where the board table is. The students have to clean every day. They, in the morning, their job is they clean the bathrooms, they clean everything up, and then by the time they're done, the place is open. So they, this young fellow, he was in grade 12, just graduated that year, and him and one of the girls that worked there were scared to work in that room by themselves. They would not go into that room alone. There's somebody in there watching them.
But you
So
don't
they-
know her story then? Like, you don't know if she was murdered or do you
No, I know
know?
him with a little girl. Don't know if she got left behind or whatever. I had no
Okay.
idea. So these 2 students were there and they were cleaning up and he opened the door that goes to the upstairs. The girl was standing on the stairs.
So is this I'm looking at you, okay? So are you saying, the details, everything, was it almost like a, what do I say, like a fog almost, that you could see the pink bow, or is it
It's
actual?
just like a real child standing there in front of me. She's just like a real little girl standing in front of me. And then she just kind of.
See? She doesn't believe me because I've had experience too.
But anyway, this student, once we caught him and he ran away, he did come back and then we had 2 people who worked with him in there. Terrified, but there are ghosts in the building.
So who was murdered there?
Back in the early 1900s, 1910, 1911, somewhere around there, there was a couple, they lived outside of Boston. She was from Woodstock, New Brunswick, and she lived in a Syrian community in Woodstock. And he was Syrian, and he lived in a Syrian community outside Boston. And I don't know what time of the year it was, I can't remember that right off. The wife ran away. She lived in Boston. She ran away with a traveling salesman from Woodstock, New Brunswick. I haven't been able to find out his name yet. But anyway, so they ran off and they went to Woodstock. Well, the husband decided that a couple of days later he couldn't live without her. So he got on the train and he came to McAdam and caught the Woodstock train and he went to Woodstock. And he found her. And he brought her back. But when that train pulled into McAdam, they got off the train. Apparently they argued up the whole way on the train coming back from Woodstock. They were outside the platform and they continued to argue and they came into the waiting room. Now, there was always more than 1 passenger train there at a time. The Woodstock train had just arrived. There was probably 2 more trains there, probably a freight train sitting there. So they continued, they came into the waiting room and it was packed full of people. And they continued to fight. He got so exasperated with her, he hauled out a gun. And he fired 2 shots at her. He hit her in the abdomen with both shots. Luckily, he didn't hit anybody else. The men that were in the room, they grabbed him, they got the gun away from him. CPR police who worked there, they were immediately summoned and they came in. And the doctor, they had their own doctor on the railway, he came over and they fixed her up and they put her back on that Woodstock train. It was the fastest medical help. She didn't die. It was the fastest medical help. St. Stephen was a train they always went to, the hospital they always went to, but there was no train going to St. Stephen. There was a Woodstock train going to Woodstock already. It wasn't waiting for anybody, they took her back to Woodstock. She lived for about 3 days in the Woodstock Hospital, and she died. And he was charged with first-degree murder. He was arrested, taken to Fredericton, and his trial was held at the Old York County Courthouse in Fredericton. He was found guilty. And what was he sentenced to in 1907 or 1908 of murder in those days?
Oh, he's probably not.
Hmm?
No, he was killed, I mean, probably.
And so what was he sentenced to?
Maybe hung that.
He wasn't hung, he missed the hangman. He got 5 years in Dorchester Penitentiary. The newspaper article stated, she was the belle of the community, and he, being 10 years her senior, was not blessed with the same good looks. So he was young, she was young and beautiful, he was old and ugly, so ladies, it's her fault, right?
So that is true then.
That's a true story. I have
That's not a Frank
I
Carroll.
have the newspaper, I have the newspaper articles on that.
Okay.
Copies of the statements that he made to the police when he was arrested.
Okay.
And there is a jail, there was actually 2 jails in the McAdam Station. There's one on the outside, on the back side of the building by the pond. There is a jail there. And the other one was in the immigration had a jail in their office as well.
Well, let's see.
And that was torn out 50 years ago. And that's now the area where we store stuff. So that area had to be shifted around a bit.
Well, I hope you find the story of the little girl. That would be interesting.
I'm going to, well, like paranormals, they were there they've been there the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, the day they came was a hurricane. Both years they came as a hurricane. Last year it got canceled and went going through the next week.
I don't think I'd let them back then.
But anyway, so they would probably be back again next fall. It's always been September when they came. And people, like, the tickets just sold like hotcakes. I couldn't even tell you what the tickets cost. But it's, but they come and they spend the night. And it's going to be a little different now because some things have come up and we can do things a little bit differently. So they used to go in the basement. The basement's off limits now because the geothermal stuff's getting ready in there. And so that'll be other fun in the mountains. But there are ghosts in the building.
Excuse me, how many people have seen this little girl? Just yourself or other?
I'm the only one that admits to it.
But they both said, yeah, I did see this, the people that work.
But she didn't, I have a ghost in my house. It doesn't scare me. I live with a ghost.
I've seen one at my house too, so.
No, there are spirits out there, and there's just people that are lost. They just need to get to where they're going, and they're lost. Now, we're going to have a new exhibit this summer up in one of the bedrooms. And actually, it's in the bedroom. I have a sign on the wall, an article on the wall. There was a lady that came, and I don't know the year right off the top of my head. A lady that was coming in on the train, and she was having a bit, and went into labor on the train. So when they got to McAdam, there was a big blank space between Maine and crossed over. So anyway, they took her upstairs to the hotel, to one of the rooms, and she delivered a baby boy there. So this past summer, a girl came to the station. She used to live in McAdam, and her father was the doctor in McAdam, Dr. O'Keefe.
Okay.
And Dr. O'Keefe delivered that baby. So she brought all his medical tools and his bag that he used for delivering babies. So the room's gonna now have a baby in it with all his medical equipment, because he just delivered this baby.
What was the story of the baby that they found? It's outside
On the
McAdam.
tracks.
Yeah,
On the tracks.
yeah, yeah.
That's what I was thinking, maybe that was the ghost.
No, that baby was, they believe was thrown off a train. It was a newborn baby.
Yes.
They believe it was thrown off the train right after, maybe before it went into the US. We don't know which, it could have been somebody going into the US. Anyway, and the workers the next day they stopped at a certain place every day and always had their lunch. And they had a nickname for the place they stopped. It was London Knoll or whatever, and that's where they had their lunch. And they parked their motor car, or then it would have been a pump car, and they stopped to have their lunch, and there was a baby there. This was like early 1900s, late 1800s. No way they ever found out who the baby was back then. So they dug a grave and they buried the baby. They looked after the grave, eventually put a fence around it, put a little marker on it, a cross on it, and it was always kept mowed, always kept picked up. And it's still there now. It has a stone marker on it, and it's still always looked after. So we tell people about it, and when you go towards the border, you just have to stop and across the road and wait and see the grave.
Tea, Sir Coffee.
Now, there was another baby that, they
Come
found,
to your coffee.
this was in,
This is a
Mansfield,
tea.
Just bought.
another, area, place, it's called, it's when they used to run, way back when they used to run logs down the St. Croix River, down to St. Stephen, and they were doing running logs, and there was a log jam. And when the workers had these long steel things they used, with a big hook on it, they'd use that to move the logs out, and when you put it down into the water, it'd run into the pillowcase with the baby, newborn baby. And they assume it came off a train going over the bridge. So they, and it was on the American side when it was found, so the American authorities, they took it and they buried it at a place probably about, it's only 5 or 6 miles from Vanceboro towards St. Stephen. And they buried that baby there, and they fixed it up, and it's at a campsite now. It's called Baby's Grave Campsite, it's on the US side. Now, if you decide to go see it and go on a canoe ride, do not go by canoe to that campsite. You'll spend many days in jail in Maine. You have to drive up to the border, go through the border, and then drive down the American side. And they are lots of canoes there all the time.
All right, well, I think that, your voice is running out or
Is your
something.
brain?
No, it
But
was
you can
great.
continue, talking and we can, converse while we have time. No problem. Not a problem, it's okay. Thank you again.
Almost 4 o'clock. You talk a lot.